Now, when Mars enters a sign, what does it typically do? Well, in a general sense, Mars often brings strife and disruption wherever it goes. Mars has no problem elbowing people to one side, and so Mars is a planet that feeds on conflict. It feeds on battle. It feeds on arguments and dispute. Or it can also bring inside of you a reaction where you are ready to fight back or resist or to rise to the occasion of yourself. Mars is the planet that's going to put you first. Mars doesn't say, me first, pay attention to me or something along those lines. And so when Mars moves through a sign, it's going to push you, whatever your nature is, to the head of the line. If you say, I really want that, Mars is going to say, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom, and I'm your weekly horoscope columnist here on Astrology Hub. And this time, I wanted to talk to you about Mars entering the zodiac sign of Virgo on June 17th. Now, when Mars enters a sign, what does it typically do? Well, in a general sense, Mars often brings strife and disruption wherever it goes. That's because in astrology, Mars was named after the Roman god of war. And so Mars is a planet that feeds on conflict. It feeds on battle. It feeds on arguments and dispute. But another thing that Mars does when it enters a zodiac sign is that it emboldens that sign. It empowers that sign. And it makes that sign express itself in a way that is commanding and affirmative. So there are different ways that Mars can behave when it enters a zodiac sign. It can, as I just said, bring strife and conflict, or it can also bring inside of you a reaction where you are ready to fight back or resist or to rise to the occasion of yourself. Something that you would not have done unless you were confronted with something that you found completely impossible, implausible, and goes against your nature or your moral code. So Mars is the planet of conflict and fighting for things, as I just said. But Mars also plays a very important part in your astrological chart. Mars is the planet that's going to put you first. All right. Now, Mars doesn't say, me first, pay attention to me or something along those lines. Mars will push you to the head of the line. Now, if you're born under a zodiac sign, like for instance, Aries or Leo, being pushed to the head of the line isn't a problem. It's actually where you belong. You're kind of like, I should be at the head of the line and everyone should follow me. These are signs that are comfortable with being pushed to the head of the line. But there are other signs that aren't as comfortable with being pushed to the front of the line. One that comes to mind is Cancer, and another one that comes to mind is Pisces. They don't like being pushed forward or into something that they haven't really agreed to or initiated on their own. And so when Mars moves through a sign, it's going to push you, whatever your nature is, to the head of the line. It's going to say, me first, or what I want matters. And in particular, it's going to say, what I want matters most to me, and I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get it. Okay, so Mars has no problem elbowing people to one side or stepping on other people's feet or doing anything along those lines to assert itself. So this is Mars's job. Mars's job is to get you what you want. What Mars is going to do is look to you to back it up. If you say, I really want that, Mars is going to say, yeah, let's go ahead and do it, And so your response should be, in terms of Mars understanding you, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. Let's go ahead and apply for that job, or let's go ahead and do that audition, or let's go ahead and change the way that I exercise or diet in my life. Okay, so Mars is looking to you to go with the way that it's going to push you to the head of the line. But for instance, if you say, I really want that, and Mars is like, hey, let's go ahead and do it, and you're like, I don't know. Maybe we can do it tomorrow or another time. Mars is going to turn around to you and be like, "What's up? I thought we were like in on this together. I thought we were going to go ahead and accomplish something." So the thing is, you also have a responsibility to Mars. Mars can push you to the head of the line. Mars can go and get you what you want, but you have to be the backup. You have to be the follow through. And if you don't follow through with that, then that can create a lot of difficult situations with Mars energy when it's active in your life. So, what is Mars in Virgo going to be like? Is it going to make you hypercritical? Is it going to make you extraordinarily exacting? Is it going to make you persnickety or obsessed with details and fighting over the small little things? Uh, Maybe, but actually, Mars in Virgo is a bit more than that. What we want to do is sort of take a quick little look at the zodiac sign of Virgo. To me, Virgo is one of the most complex signs of the zodiac. It's very singular. Now, why is Virgo singular? Well, when I look at Virgo, I see that it is the only zodiac sign that depicts a woman. I'm talking about when you look at the classic 12 signs of the zodiac. When you look at the classic 12 signs of the zodiac, you see a lot of bare-chested men who are half horse or carrying big jugs of water, or you see rams and bulls with horns, or you see lions with manes. These are very masculine figures. Um, when you look at something like, okay, maybe the crab or the scorpion or the fish, the gender is kind of indeterminate. You don't really know if it's a man or a woman, male or female. But when you look at Virgo, Virgo is always a woman, all right? There's no disputing that Virgo is a woman, and she's the only woman in the entire zodiac. And that, to me, when I look at these zodiac signs, is an extraordinary statement, especially when you remember the period of time that astrology was coming into being and the different Western societies that Western astrology was passed down through. These tended to be societies that were very patriarchal, meaning men who were dominating the society and dominating the culture. So, Virgo, when we see the zodiac sign of Virgo, it is not a woman who accompanies a man or is with a man. It actually depicts a woman who is on her own. It is a woman who is by herself. And that was a big statement for a number of centuries, where women were treated as men's property, where whatever money a woman might have inherited through her family was automatically given over to the husband, where women were even disposable, especially when it came to the issue of childbirth. Until recently, a lot of women died in childbirth. It was a very challenging period in a woman's life to bear a child and to deliver the child. And when you're looking at a society like ancient Greece, if a wife died in childbirth, it was like, oh, wow, that's kind of like rough. Let's go and get a new one. So, there was a kind of disposability to women. There was a kind of like, okay, this woman died and I'm just going to go and find a new one. Now, obviously, I'm speaking very general terms, but the reason I'm speaking in these general terms, but these historical terms and these cultural terms, is that a lot of these themes inform Virgo and the people who are born under Virgo or who have Virgo rising. There is a fear of being disposable. There is this sense that if you don't make yourself indispensable to the people in your life, then you will be left by the side of the road, like maybe last night's garbage or something along those lines. So, this is part of the reason why Virgos embrace so vigorously the attributes that are connected to the sign, which are work and service. It's actually work, health, and service. The body, work, body, health, and service. These are all attributes that are very much connected to the zodiac sign of Virgo. It's the need to have a healthy body, because as long as I have my health, then I can make a living or take care of myself. There is service, which for many centuries was the only occupation that was open to women. And it was the idea of work, working very hard, making yourself indispensable. So these are some of the ideas that are connected with the zodiac sign of Virgo. And these are some of the ideas that we'll be seeing play out with Mars traveling through that zodiac sign. So when we remember that Virgo is a woman, and it's a woman thrown on her own devices, her own resources, who's living in a man's world, she could either be submissive, or when we remember that Virgo is ruled by the planet Mercury, which is the planet of the mind, she can be very clever and she could be very shrewd. And so this is something that's also very important to Virgo. How do I make myself indispensable so that I'm never abandoned or left? But then if I'm living in a man's world and the rules are made by men, how can I outsmart them? How can I be smarter than they are in order to get my way? If you're familiar with a show like Downton Abbey, for instance, where you have, the wealthy people in charge and the servants who serve them, you see an example of how the servants actually rise in the estimation of the people who employ them by becoming indispensable. A servant is often someone that the master or the mistress of the house confides in, or feels even like they're their only true friend. They may even assign certain responsibilities or duties to the servant because they just don't want to deal with it. Again, that's an example of a Virgo making themselves indispensable by learning the game, playing the game better than the people in charge do, and also by taking on responsibilities or tasks that people don't really want to do. It's in this very subtle way, apparently submissive way, that a Virgo can change the rules of the game and start setting the agenda, start setting the schedule, start setting the routine, start saying the way that things are going to be done, not from a place of commanding, but from a place of servitude. All right, so with Mars going through the zodiac sign of Virgo, we're going to see Mars championing issues that are important to women. Okay, this can be women's rights, this can be women's bodies, women's health. Virgo was also associated with the underdog or the worker, the underclass. So this can be championing workers. This can be advocating for people who have been disenfranchised or thrown away, like so much refuse, who are being treated as something that is dispensable. So Mars, when it moves through a zodiac sign like Virgo, can bring an advocacy. It can bring a championing of these themes. And these are things that we would expect to see as Mars goes through the zodiac sign. So that's kind of Mars and Virgo on a global way or a cultural way. But let's go ahead and take a look at what Mars and Virgo is going to be doing to each one of the zodiac signs. If you're born under Aries or you have Aries rising, Mars will be moving through that part of your solar horoscope that has to do with work and service. Mars is in Virgo, which is a zodiac sign that identifies with work and service. And so this, at first glance, should be really nice. This should be very good. This may show that you are being particularly industrious during this period of time and that you are being of service to other people. Obedience is going to be something that's very important to you. Now, Aries, contrary to popular opinion, is actually a very obedient sign. Aries is ruled by Mars, which is traveling through Virgo. Mars is named after the Roman god of war. So Aries is pretty much the good soldier. It follows the command or the lead of the person that's in charge. And Aries really prides itself on that, that sort of military honor, that heroism, that sacrifice, that leave no man or woman on the battlefield. These are things that are going to be very important to people who are born under Aries. So when you have Mars moving through the zodiac sign of Virgo, you're going to have very high standards as a worker. All right. You have high expectations from yourself as to what your job performance should be. And you're going to also hold yourself to high standards. And if you're going to hold yourself to high standards, you're going to hold the people who work with you to high standards as well. So this is going to be a period of time in which you may be very sort of exacting in the way that you want things done. You may be very specific in the way that you want things done. You expect people to be able to deliver. You have these high standards. And this may also be a period of time because Mars can also be associated with where it can cause trouble for you. This may be a period of time in which your high standards, your exacting standards, are also rubbing people the wrong way. Co-workers might be like, well, I don't know if I can get that done on time like that. And your response might be like, you have a job, do it, and they might be like, I'm going to HR about that, So you may find yourself being called to HR, being called down on the mat for being perhaps brusque or commanding or a bit abrasive with your co-workers. And being an Aries, you're going to be like, well, why am I the person who's being called in or for creating trouble when I'm dealing with lesser lights, when I'm dealing with, well, let's be frank, lazy people or people who aren't keeping up. So why am I being called into HR? Why am I being called down on the mat for this or being called out for this? So this is a period of time in which at first you may not really understand how holding everyone to your high standards is not only rubbing people the wrong way, but creating trouble for you. Now, that doesn't mean that you should muzzle yourself, okay? But what it does mean is that you probably have to look for a more effective way of getting people on board with the high standards that you are standing for. So maybe perhaps instead of shaming them or humiliating them or making them feel bad, you might want to take on more of a buddy type of energy, like a friend, like a pal, like showing them how they can do better. You may want to spend a little time asking them, what about this job or this task are they struggling with? As an Aries, that means you have to listen to the story of their life and why they're going through these struggles. And as an Aries, that's going to be hard because your reaction will be like, just get over it, but you're going to have to put on a kind and helpful and encouraging face. That's when you sort of want to switch into coach mode, where you're encouraging someone to do the best that they can possibly do. If you can practice these skills of, helping the person to become better at what they're doing, maybe showing them the ropes, spending time with them, listening to their life story, this could actually create a situation in which you become much more effective and you actually get the people to reach these high standards and you can sort of see them meeting what your expectations are rather than resisting or defying them. And so this is where working with Mars and Virgo in this particular avenue could actually be extremely beneficial to you. If you're born under Taurus or you have Taurus rising, this 7-week period that Mars is traveling through Virgo is going to be a wonderful period for you. The reason for that is because Mars is traveling through a zodiac sign that trines yours. A trine is a relationship between two zodiac signs that share the same element. Taurus is an earth element, Virgo is an earth element. They have this in common, and so they trine, they support one another. All right, so when you have trining energy, what's going to happen is that other sign is going to work with you to get you what you want. All right, so if you've got Mars, which is in Virgo, a zodiac sign that trines you, Mars is going to help you to get what you want. And it's not going to be in an aggressive way or hostile way or a combative way. It's going to be in a trying way. So if you say, okay, I really want this, I really want that, or, I really want to ask someone out, or I really want to start work on a new song. Okay, if you say that, Mars is going to say, okay, let's do it. All right. And because the energy is trining, you're going to be like, okay, yeah, let's go ahead and do it, so that when you ask that person out, they're going to be like, yeah. Or if you say, I want to work on a new song, it's going to be like, oh, wow, I'm getting the lyrics and they're coming at me so crazily. I have to sort of narrate them in my phone or something like that. So what Mars does is that it opens up the access to you getting what you want. And in this particular transit of Mars and Virgo, it's not really bumping up against any planets that are going to be obstructing or making that sort of thing difficult. And so there's an ease with this type of energy. But what's important is that you represent to yourself that this is something that you want. All right. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is that this can't be a hope. This can't be a wish. This can't be something that I wish I could do this one day. You have to apply yourself. We're dealing with Mars here. It's going to get you what you want, but you're also in an earth sign. And earth is an element that's very much about work. Okay, so you have to apply yourself. You have to work for what you want. You have to make yourself available. You have to make yourself presentable. You have to get the tools so that you can do the job that you've set forth in front of you. So a trine isn't just like, oh, I wish I were, the king of Egypt or something like that. It's like, is it possible for you to become, I don't know, the king of Egypt? That was the example I drew. But anyway, is it possible for you to become the king of Egypt? And it's like, no, it's not. But is it possible for you to rise through the ranks, to become a person in a position of authority? If it looks doable to you, then it's going to happen. You can apply yourself to it. So that's why you have to choose goals and targets that are reachable, that are attainable, things that you can work at and improve and gain, and not things that are just impossible or something along those lines. That would be a waste of this trining energy. But in any regard, Mars is in Virgo, so it's going to go and pursue creativity for you. It's going to pursue a love life for you. It's going to pursue romance for you. And it's going to pursue pleasures and joys because these are the things that are associated with the solar fifth house, which is where it's traveling in your chart. It can even be about children, maybe wanting to have children or raising children. These are things that all of a sudden will become very doable for you during this period of time. So use your trine and your time wisely, and you will find that the period of time that Mars is in Virgo is a wonderful period of time for you. If you're born under Cancer or you have Cancer rising, this 7-week period that Mars is traveling through the zodiac sign of Virgo is going to be a wonderful period for you. Now, it's said that Virgo can be a very critical sign, that Virgo tends to focus more on the faults than the pluses and to point them out. And if you don't take care of them immediately, then it will nag you about it until you do. That is, as many things are in astrology, a stereotype. Something that might have been an observation at one point, but has since been exaggerated and become a generality, and one that is actually, I think, counterproductive, not to mention inaccurate. What happens when Mars is traveling through the zodiac sign of Virgo is that Mars is a planet that's going to put you first. It's going to make sure that you come first. It's going to make sure that you assert yourself, all right, that you be the best that you can be. When it's traveling through a zodiac sign like Virgo, a sign that sextiles your own sign, Cancer, and remember that a sextile is a relationship between two planets that share the same gender, as it used to be called in astrology. You had your masculine signs and your feminine signs. Your masculine or yang signs were the air and fire signs, and your feminine or yin signs were the earth and water signs. So Virgo being an earth sign and Cancer being a water sign forms a natural sextile. So this brings out a benevolent side of Mars. This brings out a very constructive side of Mars. So Mars can be a planet which wants you to get what you want and is going to make sure you go ahead and do that. It's a planet that wants you to be the best that you can be. But Mars in a sextile is very much a good coach. This is someone who's on your side. This isn't someone who's going to humiliate you or shame you into self-improvement. This is someone who's going to work with you one-on-one, like a trainer at a gym or a personal tutor. Someone who's going to make sure that you absorb what is being shared with you, and that you can achieve the things that you want to achieve. Not because you're being, thrown all these difficult things to handle, these impossible challenges, but Mars, when it's sextiling your own sign, is kind of making sure that the challenges are doable. They're always challenging, but it's a little bit more than you did yesterday. It's a little bit more than what you expected to accomplish. So Mars is always sort of slightly raising the bar. It's not like raising the bar, but it's slightly raising the bar so that you can do a little bit more, that you can build endurance and you can accomplish more. In the zodiac sign of Virgo, it's analyzing the areas of improvement, that you can work on, but it's also making those areas of improvement accessible to you. So this Mars is less of a motivating Mars in terms of like, yeah, you can do it. Come on, punch that bag, or something like that. And more of kind of like, okay, that was a good punch, but let's work on your form. Let's focus on how you went about that punch. You didn't have to, go and swing and hit like that. Why don't you come from the elbow here and punch? Make it more of a jab. So what Mars is doing is that it's working with you specifically in specific areas to improve. Now, the third house, and it's the third solar house that Mars will be in Virgo during this period of time. It's basically your neighborhood, the people that you see every day. You're like, kind of like, hi, Hal, how's it going? And Hal's like watering his hedges and great, Jane, or something along those lines, right? And so it may be a neighbor or it may be someone who that you maybe hire as a trainer or a consultant in some way, or it may be someone who's a member of a group or a society that you're part of, or someone who's kind of like around, who maybe one day you come home with a punctured bike tire and you're like, oh, my bike tire, and your neighbor comes over and it's like, hey, what's wrong? And it's like, my bike tire is punctured, and they're like, oh, I can fix that for you. But at the same time, they're going to show you how you can fix it for yourself in the future. All right, so this is like a good coach type of energy, but it's also because Virgo believes very powerfully in that saying, if you give a man a fish, he eats for one day. But if you teach a man how to fish, he'll eat forever. Virgo is very much about bringing about self-sufficiency, showing you how you can do it so that you can take care of yourself in the future. And so that might be some neighborly advice, or it might be someone that you're put into contact with through someone else, someone who's going to help you, but also show you how you can do it. Now, when these sorts of things happen, we aren't always maybe in the right mindset for that. We might be like, fix the TV already. Like, I don't want you to take apart the back of the TV and show me how it's done. Just like fix the TV already, all right? Well, when you have a sextile energy, you're going to be in the headspace of like, well, yeah, let's take off the back of the TV and show me, what's a foul and show me how I can fix that. So you're going to find yourself actually wanting to learn that, at first you might be like, this is a little inconvenient, I have things to do. But then a part of you may also stop yourself and say, you know what? There's going to be a day when someone's not around and you're going to have to figure out how to do this on your own. And these are, I find, the best educational experiences. It's funny, I find the best educational experiences are actually outside a classroom, or even a work environment. because you feel so pressured or you put pressure on yourself. So this is someone who's around and who's going to show you how to do something for yourself. And as a result, you're going to feel really wonderful about it, like very empowered, but also very educated and able to take care of yourself. And probably the best part of it, because it is Virgo, the zodiac sign of work and service, not only will you learn how to do this yourself, but you're going to be super eager and excited about showing someone else how they can do it, showing them how they can fix a tire or fix the back of a TV or something along those lines. So it's not something that's just going to help you out in the moment, but it's something that's going to actually enable you to help someone else out in one of those moments sometime in the future. If you're born under Gemini or you have Gemini rising, this period of time that Mars is traveling through the zodiac sign of Virgo is going to be a stressful and a combative one for you. Now, does that mean like hardship and you're suddenly going to find yourself on a battlefield fighting for your life or something along those lines? No, no, not at all. But Mars will be traveling through that part of your solar chart that does pertain to home and family. And so when Mars is going through this part of your solar horoscope, and it will be here for about 7 weeks, it's going to turn your home, your happy place into an emotional war zone. It's going to bring up all kinds of difficulty. Now, this could be difficulty with people that you share your home with. This could be a loved one. This could be a roommate. Um, in which all of a sudden, what was sort of simpatico or you thought was simpatico is no longer simpatico. People are voicing their gripes. People are voicing their grievances. People are having a hard time. Now, they may be having a hard time with you, or their hard time might be at work or in their lives, and they're bringing it home, and you all have to deal with it. And your feeling might be like, well, I had a really busy work day too. And, I'm coming home and I just sort of like want to chill and relax. And I don't want to deal with your grumpy mood or your snarky attitude or anything along those lines. So this is a period of time in which if you're living with people or with loved ones, they're bringing home their problems. They're sort of tracking their psychic mud into the house. And you may find that you have to address that. And not necessarily in a sort of like, stop tracking your psychic mud into the house sort of way, but you might have to address it in terms of sitting down with the person and listening, and sitting down with the person and asking what's wrong or what's up. You're not going to be able to sort of shut your door and go into your room and do your own thing, because the person will come knocking at the door or come in with the problem or say, take those earbuds out of your ears and listen to me, so they're going to go. You can't dive down a rabbit hole here, because the person's going to dive down the rabbit hole right after you. I mean, they're really looking not necessarily for a fight. It might very well be a fight, but they're also looking to air their grievances and their problems, and they're convinced that you should hear them and that you should also solve what their problems are. So there's going to be a lot of domestic conflict during this period of time. And being a Gemini, you're kind of okay with that. I mean, you can roll with that. You're not a water sign that's like, I have my privacy, and stay out is like on top of your door. Also Tauruses can have that too. If the door is closed, you don't knock on it. You're a Gemini, so if someone's having a problem or an issue or walking around the house like that, you're going to be like, what's up? Because that Gemini curiosity and that Gemini proclivity to break the ice and to talk through matters, problems, and issues. So this might be what the Mars in Virgo is bringing too. Mars in Virgo may also be holding you accountable to things that haven't been done. Okay, let's say it's a roommate situation and you're supposed to buy the toilet paper and you haven't been keeping up with your toilet paper purchases. You might be like uh, scolded or talked to in some sort of way, or your job is to do the toilet paper. So where is it? Sort of thing. So these may also be things that are being brought up. The fourth house also deals with property matters and real estate concerns. So you may be dealing with certain property matters or real estate concerns going on during the next 7 weeks. Maybe you're trying to sell a house. Maybe you're trying to buy a house. Maybe you're dealing with plumbing issues or wiring issues or something like that along the lines in the home. Things that you may be like, why is this happening and why do I have to deal with it? And whenever you have Mars in a sign is always like, deal with it, so you can't get out of it. You can't like, pass the buck or pass it on to someone else. And you can't treat it superficially. It can't be like, oh, there's a crack in the wall. Let's paint over it, and ignore the fact that there might be like water seeping through it or something like that. You have to dig down. You have to get to the bottom of whatever the issue or the problem is, and you have to deal with it in a fundamental way because we're dealing with the fourth house here. This isn't a quick fix solution. This is a I have to take care of this. This is foundational. This is something which is very important and has to be taken care of. And because the fourth house in the solar chart is at the bottom of the chart, you literally have to get to the bottom of what's going on. So these are things for you to sort of deal with, to look forward to for your next 7 weeks. You may feel like you're living in a war zone, at home, but that's only because these are situations that have needed to be addressed or dealt with for a long period of time. And, we all say to ourselves, well, one day I'll get around to. When you're dealing with Mars going through the nadir of your horoscope, that one day is today. If you're born under Leo or you have Leo rising, Mars in Virgo isn't really going to sit comfortably with you. The reason it's not going to sit comfortably with you is that you're going to find during this 7 week period that Mars is in Virgo that you are suddenly at everyone else's beck and call. Now, your reaction might be like, at someone else's beck and call? What are you talking about? That. Leo likes to have other people at their beck and call. Leo's sort of like, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? I mean, I always think of Leo as Mrs. Howell from Gilligan's Island. I don't know if you ever watched Gilligan's Island. I loved Gilligan's Island. It's seven stranded castaways who go on a tour boat, and it goes through a storm and gets shipwrecked on an island, and I don't know, hilarity ensues as they try to make a life for themselves on this desert island. Well, a couple that was on that tour boat that went out for a 3-hour tour and got lost at sea is a millionaire couple. There's Mr. Howell and there's Lovey, who's Mrs. Howell. And when it comes to having to make a life for themselves or whatever on this island, they are probably the most useless of the group. Okay, because they've never done any work in their lives and they don't know what it's like, and they have a tendency to sort of order the other castaways around. And the person most guilty of that is Mrs. Howell. There was one episode I loved it, I thought was hysterical, where she was doing landscaping on the island and she wanted the palm trees moved over to where the coconut trees were, and the coconut trees moved over to where the palm trees were. And so Gilligan and the skipper had to like move them back and forth. And she's like, oh, no, 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 that's wrong. Let's put the coconut trees back where the palm trees were and the palm trees back. I mean, it's hysterical. Anyway, that's kind of my way of setting up Leo. All right, no, you're not all frivolous and silly or things like that. Not at all. Leos can be extremely hardworking and very devoted and very dedicated. But Leo is ruled by the sun, and the sun is basically the most important planet of all the ruling planets. In astrology, the sun is a planet and the moon is a planet. And the sun is a planet, and it's the only planet that's really a star. Okay, so there's this star quality to a Leo, where they can sort of expect other people to do for them in a way. And what happens when you've got Mars in Virgo is imagine Mrs. Howell on the island, and now she actually has to work. She has to chip in The other castaways have decided not to move the palm trees and the coconut trees around for her. They're kind of like turning to Mrs. Howell and they're like, you know what? You've got arms and legs like everyone else, and your survival depends on all of us, and our survival depends on you. So roll up your sleeves and get to work, lovey. Okay, and that might be sort of the feeling that's going on here with Mars and Virgo. Now, this isn't to say that you've been some sort of dauphin, you've been some sort of like celebrated favored child until now. No, not at all. What it means is that you may find yourself all of a sudden in a situation at work or financially in your life where things aren't as comfortable as they once were, where you actually have to go and work again. You know, sometimes this can happen with maybe being between jobs or taking on an extra job to add the income, something along those lines. Something that might have seemed all right at a distance, but now that you have to do it, you're kind of really put out by it. You know, it's you didn't realize that it was going to really have to be this much hard work, or that your dedication to maybe a project or an enterprise is going to be more taxing than you thought it was going to be. Let's say during this period of time, Mars is in Virgo for 7 weeks, you're asked to work on a project or an enterprise. Maybe it was even your idea, and you find that people aren't getting it and that you actually have to walk them through what it is. Or you might find like the project or enterprise, the funding may be cut, maybe it is reduced, and you have to pull in an oar right now. And so it's becoming one of the team of players, you know, someone who's working as hard as everyone else. And maybe you were supposed to be directing or you're supposed to be in charge, and now you're picking up the slack. Now you're doing the extra work. And part of you is like, I shouldn't have to be doing this. I was supposed to be the director of this or the point man or something along those lines. You know, I thought I was going to be in charge of talented people, and you maybe discovering that they weren't as talented or skilled as they purported to be or as they were supposed to be. So, like I'm saying, you have to, you know, come in and pull an oar. You have to apply yourself in a way that you weren't expecting to apply yourself before. And this is actually going to be, in the long run, a very good thing for you. Not because it's, you know, you're Mrs. Howell and you need to roll up your sleeves and, you know, dig up that coconut tree along with everyone else. It's going to actually reconnect you to the work that you do in a way that you haven't been connected in a long time. Sometimes when we take on like a supervisor position or a person in charge position, or we're the concept person, but we don't have to execute it. And then and then we suddenly find that we have to do that. Um, we can resist it. This isn't what I signed on for. This isn't my job title. We can recognize the necessity of having to help out and work really hard. And then we can feel that camaraderie with the people that we're working with, you know, instead of being Mr. and Mrs. Howell and you know, ordering around Skipper and Gilligan and Professor and Mary Ann and even Ginger. There's a camaraderie. There's a discovery of we're all in it together, and you can feel like you're part of the team. You're part of the group, and this can make you identify or see parts of a project, enterprise, or work that you didn't really see before, that you can take pride in what you're doing, that it felt good to get down into the earth and dig up, you know, that coconut tree or that palm tree and to heave ho and move it to another place. It felt good. I felt I was using my body and my ingenuity. How do you move a coconut tree? You know, all these sorts of things. And so this is something that might be an unexpected result of Mars traveling through the zodiac sign of Virgo. Again, at first you might be like, moi, me, do that. But at the end of the 7 weeks, I think you're going to find yourself sort of arms akimbo and being proud of the things that you've done, and saying to yourself, you know what? I didn't think I could do it at first, but guess what? I found that I can, and I feel really great about it. If you're born under Virgo, or you have Virgo rising, Mars, traveling through your zodiac sign is going to put you front and center when it comes to getting things done in your life. You're at the front of the line, like I described earlier. You're not to the side, you're not flanking, you're not following somebody else. You're at the front of the line. People are looking to you to give orders and direction. How has this come about? Well, it didn't just start because Mars started traveling through your zodiac sign. It didn't just start on June 17th when Mars entered your sign. What's been going on for a while is you working for people who don't really know what they want. Okay, so you may have a particular skill set, you may have a particular expertise. Maybe you're an associate or an assistant to someone. Maybe you're the person who looks to a superior to give direction and command, and then it's your job to manage the workforce or to communicate that to other people. Maybe you came into a situation where it was your job to organize a department or to get people working together in a way that was effective and efficient. And what might be happening is you've succeeded at that. You know, the department is effective. The department is efficient. People work like a well-oiled machine. You know, all the parts are working together to affect a result. But you may also be discovering that the person who's in charge doesn't really know what they want. You may also be discovering that the person in charge may not know what to do. Now, as a Virgo, you will accept that as part of what a job perhaps requires. You know, that it's your job to make the person above you look good. And so you're going to work with that person, maybe even prop that person up, or do the behind the scenes work that needs to be done that makes this person look good. All right. And as a Virgo, you're kind of pre-programmed to do that. But not when Mars is moving through your zodiac sign. You're going to realize during this period of time that you are propping someone up, that someone is getting the recognition and the praise that you deserve, that in the past you were okay with that. It wasn't a big deal as long as you were doing a good job, you know. But right now it's going to be like, why am I handing over praise and recognition to someone who didn't come up with these ideas, who didn't know how to affect them, who didn't really know what they were doing? Why am I settling for that? Why am I saying that that's all right? Now, Virgos have a very base anxiety about being in charge. They're actually not really comfortable with it. They would rather be the power behind the throne than to sit on the throne itself. Why? Because if you look at history, it's the people who sit on the thrones who are actually much more expendable than the people who are the power behind the throne. Kings and queens can be deposed and thrown over, you know, while the people who are the bureaucracy, the people who work behind the scenes, rarely are in that position until nowadays. But anyway, we're not going to get into that. Usually, being in a bureaucratic position or being in the power behind the throne is pretty much a safe space. It's a safe position. But again, that might actually tie into the Mars and Virgo. It's no longer safe, okay? And you have to sort of step forward in a way. So you might find during this period of time with Mars and Virgo that you have to deal with someone who's a superior who doesn't know what they're doing, and that by you doing damage control is continuing the dysfunctional situation. So this might be a period of time where you have to go to other people and say, this person really can't do this job, or you might even have to stop doing it in order to let the chips fall wherever they may, or you may have to leave the situation altogether and go to something in which your talents and skills are going to be put to their best use. Another way that you can deal with this Mars and Virgo is kind of going back to the Downton Abbey example that I gave before. In Downton Abbey, we've got the wealthy people who live in the Downton Abbey place, and we have the cooks and the dressers who serve them. And as I was saying before, usually the servants are treated as confidants. maybe as true friends or true gauges of what's going on because they can't trust their peers to tell them the truth, because they're all putting on airs and pretenses. Okay, so maybe the servant is someone that they trust to give a more candid or realistic view. But at the same time, the servant isn't just there to wait on the person hand and foot. Or let me put it like this: if you wait on someone hand and foot, you become better acquainted with their hands and feet than that person does. All right. So in other words, that person starts delegating certain responsibilities or duties or something like that over to you. And so what you might find yourself entering into as a possibility, an avenue, is that you may have had certain responsibilities and duties delegated to you. You might be in charge of setting the agenda at work or setting agenda at a workplace or in the family or in a situation that you are managing. And and because you're the one who's setting the agenda or managing the situation, you can do it without having to call attention to yourself. If you say this is the way that something should be done, you say it in a way which is like, this is the way it should be done because I've decided on it. No, that's not what you want to do. You say, this is the way that this has been done because it's always been done like this, and these are the rules that we follow. And people might be like, has it really always been done like that? And then if you go into your Virgo bureaucratic self, it's like, well, actually, last week at this time, you decided on doing this, and this is the way that we've set it, and things like that. Then the person's like, oh, okay. Because arguing with you would be an inconvenience. Arguing with you would make them have to think too hard about the way that something should be done. So this is the way that Virgos can very subtly and without calling attention to themselves take over a situation and direct the situation. Now, some people might call this manipulative, and other people might call it practical. But what we have here for you with Mars moving through your zodiac sign is that you're in a position to start sort of calling the shots without calling attention to the fact that you're calling the shots, with introducing your agenda, with introducing the way that you want things done. And during this period of time with Mars in your sign, you're going to find a lot of people coming on board with that, as long as you don't call attention to it. If you call attention to it, then you will get resistance. But if you're like, well, this would be a better way of doing it, or I was thinking long and hard and thought, if we did it like this, we could cut down on the time and the effort, maybe even save money in the long run. If you present it like that, you'll find 9 people out of 10 going, that's a great idea. That's wonderful. I wonder why I didn't think of it myself. And so you'll find that the way that you want things done is getting implemented and people are following that. So that allows you to be in a director's position in a way that's comfortable for you, and also to be in a director's position that's comfortable for the people who are following your direction. If you're born under Libra, or you have Libra rising, this period of time that Mars is moving through the zodiac sign of Virgo, it's just not going to sit well with you. All right. It's going to be raising a lot of uncomfortable issues and posing a lot of questions that you'd rather not think about. But nevertheless, during this period of time that Mars is moving through Virgo, you are going to have to think of them. You're going to have to entertain these ideas. Now, what are these ideas that you might find uncomfortable? Libra is the zodiac sign of partnership. Librans enjoy being in partnership, whether it's spousal or whether it's professional or whether it's a creative collaboration with someone else. Also, Libras aren't bound to one partnership, by the way. It's not just like Libras get married and then they're happy for the rest of their life and that's it for Libra. What Libras do is that they partner with every single important person in their life, all right? So that a best friend becomes like a spouse, or a work mate becomes like a spouse. That person becomes really important, and you feel loyalty to that person. You feel a compact with that person. You feel kind of marriage to that person. And that could go from spouse to co-worker to your dog walker, or the person who's teaching you tennis. There is a fidelity which is ingrained in the zodiac sign of Libra, and where they feel like they do best when they are in collaboration or partnership with someone else. Virgo is the zodiac sign of the single woman. Okay. And that's what it's represented for 2,500 years. It was associated with the maiden. It went through a Catholic period or a Christian period where it was the chaste maiden who couldn't do anything for herself and waited for someone to show up to save her from the dragon or something along those lines. Uh, chaste maidens were rare and far between, by the way. Usually, women who were on their own were thrown on their own devices. And so they had to figure out economically how they were going to take care of themselves in a world that was dominated by men or where men made all the rules. This isn't to say that people born under Virgo didn't marry, they do all the time, but there's always this sense of like, I'm in a relationship and am I being exploited? Am I being subservient? Am I being used in some way? Am I unappreciated? And that will always be a raw nerve with Virgo, which is don't treat me like a piece of property, you know. It's something that grates on them. Uh, Virgos, if they had a sort of personal motto, it would be, you don't own me. And so Virgos can be very sensitive about this feeling of being owned or beholden to someone, which is why they'll make such a point of being self-sufficient or being able to take care of themselves. During this period of time that Mars is essentially adjacent Libra, you're going to be going through a sort of Virgo adjacent experience, all right? Um, if you're in a partnership, a relationship, there might have been a lot of stresses lately about that. And you might have been asking yourself if you want to continue with this. And so the Mars in Virgo is going to sort of needle your conscience. It's going to keep raising that issue again and again. And maybe it's been raised and you've been putting it off, or, financially I can't afford to be on my own, or okay, not everyone has the happiest marriage or working relationship. The Mars in Virgo is going to start needling you in a way, and it's going to be saying, are you selling yourself short? Are you being exploited and are you saying it's okay? Like, why are you yielding? Why are and you might be like, well, I don't know if I can do this on my own or something like that. And the Mars in Virgo is going to be pointing out to you, yes, you can. You can do it on your own. You can take care of yourself. You might even hear this echoed in conversations with friends, coworkers, acquaintances, family members. Why are you putting up with this situation where you're being exploited? Or why are you putting up with this relationship that you're not happy in, Libra? And you might be like, well, but the Mars in Virgo for the next 7 weeks is going to be like, that doesn't cut it. That doesn't work. Or how are you going to get there from here? If your here is, I'm miserable in this association or relationship, where are you going with this other than, an imprisonment of yourself? Or degradation of yourself. What are you really getting out of this? Really? And so this is not going to sit well with you. You're not going to be comfortable with it. But at the same time, you're not going to be able to sweep it under the rug. You're not going to be able to explain it away. What's going on is that Mars is getting ready to go through Libra, where these issues will become much more powerful. What's going on here, this restlessness that you're feeling, maybe even short-tempered, is all because Mars is ultimately getting ready to go into your own zodiac sign, Libra, and it will do that on August 6th. But in this prelude, in this run-up to Mars entering your sign, the Virgo energy is going to be asking these very exacting questions, these critical questions, and you may not have the answers because the answer may very well be you should be on your own, or you should be changing a partnership or an association. There's always a big fear that when you leave a partnership and you're on your own, you're never going to find a partner again. That's it, and sometimes we can say, well, better the hell you know than the heaven you don't. But think about that. Is it really better the hell you know than the heaven you don't? And so this nagging conscience, this nagging voice in your head, instead of trying to like answer it back or getting angry, listen to it. Ask it, okay, well then, if I do this, if I do end this association, if I do end this relationship, what is the next step? And let that Virgo sensibility come into play. Virgos aren't just there to criticize you and give you a hard time. Virgo energy responds magnificently to being asked what the next step is, because then they're like, oh, I get to do an action step list, So you may find that this Mars and Virgo energy either brings out your action step side, or it brings people into your life who are like, yay, you're ready to change this situation. Let's work out some action steps. Virgo is an action step sign. It wants that. So if you could sort of step away from an ambivalence, which isn't really an ambivalence, it's more a discomfort with something you know is true. If you can move more in the direction of like, well, what would I do outside of this? And think in terms of action steps, you may find this period of time as prepping you, as making you, as equipping you with the questions and then the answers and the skills and the abilities to act on a decision that you've been putting off rather than feeling imprisoned by it.
Hey there, we're going to go to the buy sign breakdowns next, but before we do, I just wanted to make sure you know about a very special opportunity to go even deeper with Christopher Renstrom. He taught a fascinating class for us on quincunxes and yods, aka the finger of God. And if there are any relationships in your life that confuse you, and or if you have these aspects in your chart and want to understand them, this one's for you. And right now, for a limited time, it is 33% off. We are going to drop that link for you to check it out in the show notes. And now, back to the episode.
If you're born under Scorpio or you have Scorpio rising, these 7 weeks that Mars is traveling through the zodiac sign of Virgo are actually going to be quite wonderful. Now, why are they going to be wonderful? I can already hear your Scorpio voice like, show me, tell me why they're going to be so wonderful, Christopher. Okay. Not because it's a show me thing. You're not going to be hitting any sudden strokes of fortune or winning the lottery or anything along those lines. What it's going to be this period of time that Mars is traveling through Virgo is you're going to be connecting with people who are in a position to take you to the next level. All right. Whatever it is that you're aspiring towards or that you are growing towards in your life, during this period of time, you're going to be meeting people who can take you to the next level. They're kind of like coaches. They can see what you're capable of doing. They can recognize your talents and skills, but they're not going to just be saying, hey, you've got a lot of potential, a lot of talent, a lot of skill. Keep it up. It's going to be like, hey, you've got a lot of potential. You've got skill. You've got something to say here. Let's see what we can do working together to take you to the next level. This is wonderful, to have a mentor, to have a coach, to have maybe a couple of mentors, a couple of coaches, to have a network of coaches and mentors, of people who really recognize what you do, who can really further you on the next step, your next journey in terms of your career or your creativity. And so this is what's coming into your life. It's a Mars energy, not a Jupiter energy. It's a Mars energy. So these are going to be people who will challenge you to challenge yourself. These are people who are going to say to you, I'm not going to do the work for you. You have to do it, but I'm going to make this available. I'm going to introduce you to someone who would be interested in what it is that you're proposing, but you're still going to have to do the work. You're still going to have to deliver. You're still going to have to show up. Now, being a Mars-ruled sign, this is music to your ears. You love this. Mars-ruled signs, Aries and Scorpio, get very uncomfortable when other people are doing for them. They don't like it at all, because there's always this feeling of, I can do that for myself. And actually, not only can I do that for myself, but I can do it better than what you're doing for me. So to have people coming into your life who are identifying areas of improvement, who are showing you how you can do it, and maybe even, writing your case for a bit. This is going to be wonderful for you. And so for the next weeks, this could be an extremely productive period of time for you, or it may be a period of time in which you realize what your shortcomings are. You realize where your deficiencies are, that, wow, I thought I was really good at this, but you know what? I'm not as good as a competitor, or I'm not as good as someone who's occupying a winner's circle that I want to be in. What's wonderful with the Mars and Virgo is that it's not going to be like, you're not that good, so, work harder. It's not going to be vague, or it's going to be like, okay, so let's study the performance of this person that you admire. What are they doing that's right? You take what they're doing that's right, but then you rework that in the context of who you are, what your humor is, what your skills are, what your talent is, what your interests are. You don't copycat someone. You study what made that person so good, and then you rework it in the context of your own life and your own priorities. This is one of the beautiful things that Virgo does. It studies a situation and it works out what that structure is, or what that formula for success is. But then it just doesn't copy it, it reworks it so that it fits you. It's kind of like a dress might look really wonderful on someone. That exact dress isn't going to work on you, but you have it tailor-made or adjusted, maybe even the color changed, so that it then shows off you in your own light. This is what's going to be going on during the time that Mars is traveling through Virgo. But it's going to ask of you to commit, to carry through, and to be disciplined about this, to take this seriously. And Scorpios are like, well, I always take everything seriously. Sometimes not the stuff that really challenges your version of you, your vision of you. Scorpios can sometimes be like, you know what? I'm not interested in that. I don't want to go down that path. And usually that's a reaction to the fear of rejection, the fear of not being good at it. And we all reach points in our life. We can reach it at the age of 3 or 7 or 25 or 60 when we're like, you know what? I know that I'm good at this. So why should I have to go and improve this, or prove myself, or go through some sort of test? I already know that I'm good at this. And you know what? I'm not interested. That's the impulse that the Mars and Virgo is going to say, no, you're not as good as you think. Okay. And so you could either accept the limit, or you can rise to the occasion. And that is going to be your choice over the next 7 weeks. If you really want to go to that higher playing level, or that higher status that you want to go to, then you're going to have to work at it, and you're going to have to work on very specific parts of yourself in service to it. And you're going to have to take a risk. You're going to have to take the risk of maybe not looking as good as, or you're going to have to take the risk of rejection. That Mars, the motto of that Mars is, then you power through it. If someone rejects you, you go somewhere else. If a door is closed to you, you go and find another one that's open, and you force it open. Okay, so that's where Mars can work for you in a very progressive and a very constructive way. And if you follow that, and it will press your anxiety buttons, but if you kind of move through your reaction to the anxiety and put yourself back on the course of wanting to elevate yourself, then you're going to find this to be a tremendously fulfilling and self-realizing experience. If you're born under Sagittarius, or you have Sagittarius rising, the next 7 weeks is all about Mars crossing over the solar midheaven of your astrological chart. When I'm saying solar midheaven, I'm referring to the midheaven of your solar chart and not your own natal horoscope. This period of time is supposed to be a period of time when you've arrived, when you've reached the zenith of your chart. Any planet going over the zenith of your chart shows that you've arrived and excelled and gone as high as you can go. So when you have Mars going over your solar midheaven, it's saying, you've arrived, you've received the honor, you've received the reward, you've received the recognition, and this is good. You've received the favor, and this is good. But we're dealing with Mars. Okay, if we're dealing with the sun, it would be like, yes, I've arrived, or if we are dealing with Jupiter, it would be like, you are the favored candidate. You're my favorite, and I'm lifting you in the esteem of everyone around. Okay, this would be Sun or Jupiter going over your midheaven. But you have Mars. So you've reached the height, something about you has been recognized as being very special, very unique. Maybe you've received wonderful reviews for a job performance or a stage performance or a film performance or something like that. And so Mars is turning to you and saying, you can do better. All right. So some signs react really well to that. Okay, they'll be like, do better? Yeah, of course I can do better. How can I do better? Show me the way, Mars. And Mars is like, okay, to do better, we're going to have to go into this intensive period of time where we reshape your mind and body and all these sorts of things. I don't know. There's all sorts of those movies where people, go from like gangly kid to karate kid, and things like that. That's what Mars does. But being a fire sign and being a Sagittarius, you're going to be like, better? But I thought I was the best. Mars is in a very critical zodiac sign. It's the zodiac sign of Virgo, which is the sign that crowns your solar midheaven. Virgos are always convinced you can do better. The whole point is to do better. Being a Jupiter ruled sign, your feeling is like, well, I got to this place and don't I get to enjoy this? And this is wonderful. And what do you mean better? Maybe I'll get around to doing better tomorrow. Do you have to spoil my moment, in the winner's circle here? And Mars in Virgo is going to be like, yes, yes, I do. So what's going on here is that Mars in Virgo for the next 7 weeks isn't really a spoiler. Mars in Virgo is alerting you to the fact that if you want to be the best at doing what it is that you do, if you want to be the best that you can be, okay, that's a Mars in Virgo statement in the solar midheaven, then you can't stop doing what you're doing. An example that I like to use a lot with Virgo is that Virgo is a sign that's often described as being a perfectionist, right? Virgos are perfectionists, and that's why they're impossible to live with because they can always point out the fault or the defect in something because it doesn't live up to their perfectionism. And that might be true to an extent with Virgos, but what I found to be truer to the case with Virgos is that they are constantly perfecting. Okay. There's perfect as a noun, which is a status and a stasis, if you think about it. And then there's perfect as a verb. And that's how I want to use it with Virgo. Virgo is always perfecting. It's always making something better. And it does it by practice. We know the phrase practice makes perfect. You practice something enough times and you become perfect at it. But there's also practice to perfect, practice to make better. And the example that immediately comes to mind, for instance, is a pianist. Let's take a concert pianist. They are continually practicing on their instrument, just like a dancer treats their body as an instrument. They are continually going to class. I remember once someone saying dancers are going to class, but they're in their late 20s. What do they have to study? I was like, that's not really what dance class is. Okay, so it's the idea of training. You're perfecting your instrument. For a dancer, the instrument that you're perfecting is your body. And for a musician, the instrument that you're perfecting may be a guitar, a piano, whatever. And you play it every day, like a writer writes every day, or a swimmer swims every day. This is what you do to become the best at what it is that you do. This is what you do to realize your personal best. Now, Sagittarians are all into that as an exciting, enthusiastic idea, but when it comes to putting in the time and the discipline, um, there's kind of a anxiety that shows up. Like if I keep doing something by rote or by practice, if I keep analyzing or criticizing something that I love doing, am I going to lose my love of doing it? Is it going to spoil my spontaneity? Is it going to spoil my creativity? Am I going to sort of, by continually, following a rehearsal or practicing something, instead of honing skills, am I going to get tired of doing it? Am I going to lose my love for this? Am I going to not be spontaneous or improvisational anymore? There's a very real fear that Sagittarians have with that. And so this is why sometimes Sagittarians can react very hostilely to any sort of criticism that can be like, stop writing me already. You're taking away my voice. You're taking away that thing that makes me special. And even though it's often portrayed as dramatic moments in a film about artists, there's a truth to it. You can do something by rote to such an extent that you destroy the creativity, that you destroy the ingenuity. That's if you do it by rote. That's if you just follow the steps that someone has put in front of you. But if you take that discipline and you make it a personal ritual for yourself, you know, yoga, for instance, is like that. I think it's one of the reasons why it's so popular is because yoga introduces through its movements a personal ritual. You are following the movements, but you're doing it in the way that your body can do it. You're doing it in your own personal way. If you can find that, if you can connect to that, if you can sort of change the reactions as a Sagittarius sun or Sagittarius rising that you may have to someone confining you, if you can change that, if you can turn that into a personal ritual, then I think you're going to find this period of time of Mars and Virgo as being really wonderful, because it allows you to go into yourself and to find those parts of yourself that are matching the practice and that are becoming better as a result. And in that way, you sort of move from being someone who had the potential to someone who really has longevity, someone who keeps growing as an artist or a performer or a person. They keep growing. It never stops. And so you kind of transform a format into a journey, but not a meandering journey. It's a growth of yourself. It's they also refer to as a spiritual practice. This is something that you might, again, your initial reaction to the Mars and Virgo might be like, stop henpecking me, stop getting on my case. But if you can hear it that it's in service to you, then I think you will find yourself responding to that call and rising to those ineffable heights. If you're born under Capricorn or you have Capricorn rising, this period of time of Mars moving through the zodiac sign of Virgo is going to be wonderfully beneficial to you. The reason for that is because Virgo trines the zodiac sign of Capricorn. A trine is a relationship between two different zodiac signs that share the same element. And in the case of Virgo, you share the element of Earth. What does Earth rule over in an astrological chart? Health and wealth, those two things. So during this period of time that Mars is traveling through Virgo, Mars is going to be saying, hey, what do you want? And you're going to say, I want to do this, or I want to do that, or I want to realize this goal or achieve this aim. And Mars is going to say, okay, let's make it happen. All right. Now, the way that you work with this energy is you want to set goals for yourself that you can attain, that you can achieve. Now, I don't mean like easy goals, like, oh, I'm going to set a goal for myself to open a door and walk through it. It's not like that. but they also can't be impossible goals. Like, I want to be queen of the universe, because it's like, that's just like not going to happen. What you want to do is select goals that challenge you and that move you forward. This can be in an area of creativity. This could be self-help. This could be something at work. Because with Mars in your corner, and that's what happens to Mars when it's in a zodiac sign that trines yours, Mars is in your corner. It becomes the coach. It's the planet that's going to say, you can do this, and we're going to do this by following these particular steps. So Mars is more than just like, you can do this. Mars is like, you can do this, and let's go A, B, C, D, E, and make it happen. All right. So that's really going to be your mindset during the 7 weeks that Mars is traveling through the zodiac sign of Virgo. So, what are you dealing with here with Mars traveling through the zodiac sign of Virgo? My feeling, because Capricorn is such a workaholic and Virgo is so much about the work ethic, my feeling is that you're dealing with a whole new work ethic during this period of time. Capricorns have a tendency to really press their nose to the grindstone and then to limit their vision to grindstone parameters, where it's like, work that tedious job, work that task, climb that mountain, and that's what I'm going to focus on. And what Capricorn isn't doing is looking up and seeing the world around it. Mars is traveling through the zodiac sign of Virgo, and Virgo occupies the ninth house in your solar horoscope. What's the ninth house? It's your view of the world. It can be your philosophy, it can be your belief, it can be the way that you see the world, it can be the way that you see God, ultimately, is really going to be the ninth house. And so, ninth house, by its orientation, is about expanding your horizons. It's broadening your thinking. It's showing an interest and a curiosity in different cultures, in different peoples, in different ways that people live. Okay, it's not a house that's demanding that this is the one way of doing things and you follow it and that's it. It's actually a house of like, well, how do they do things in Australia? Or how do they do things in Mozambique? Okay, there's a real curiosity, there's a real sense of wonder about how people in totally different societies and countries than you live and work. And there's a fascination, there's an interest in this. Now, does that mean that you're getting on airplanes or ocean liners or going and traveling to these places? Well, you might be. There might be a lot of travel that's going to be going on for you for the next 7 weeks. But I have a sense that's a little bit more along the lines of broadening your horizons when it comes to your particular work ethic. For instance, a big question that you might be asking yourself right now is, am I working hard at working hard? All right. There's hard work and there's working hard at working hard. Working hard at working hard is usually a familiar mode of working where you put a lot of burdens on your shoulders and you don't change it because this is the way you've always done it. And Capricorns can treat that as a point of pride, a medal even. Do you know how long I worked at this? Capricorns are, I don't know, back in the times of ancient Egypt, would have pointed to a pyramid and say, do you know how much blood, sweat, and tears went into building that pyramid? I gave everything I had to give. Capricorns really treat that as a medal of honor. But that doesn't necessarily advance you, and that doesn't necessarily make you efficient. All right. You can grunt. It's kind of like the person at the gym who's like, and they're lifting up the weights and they're like, "Huh," and then they drop it, bump, bump, and they're like, huh, and they look around for everyone to be like, oh, weightlifter, that was so muscular. And, it's not that. Being efficient, okay, and effective, that often has to do with streamlining the way that you work and focusing on the particular points that you can do to get as far as you could possibly get in terms of progressing on a project or enterprise or producing a wonderful project. So the more that you work, the more that you want to economize your effort and the more that you want to focus it so that it's getting done the things that you want to be getting done, so that you're not like grueling trying to lift this weight, but that you're figuring out through building up body and working on different exercises of how you can achieve the same aims without grunting and dropping the weight at the gym and making everyone look at you. All right, so here, Mars in Virgo is a very streamlining type of energy. It's going to show you what you can do by getting rid of maybe three-quarters of what it is that you bring to the table. All right. You might have a certain process or a method or a procedure, and it may be heavily laden with barnacles, like one of those ship docks, and it's not as lean and mean as it can be. So, this period of time that Mars is going through Virgo may put you in contact with someone that you're working with. Maybe it's a client, maybe it's a coworker who's like, there's a better way of doing that, or you know what, you don't really have to put all of this excruciating effort into this. You can do it if you take away maybe 9/10 of what you're doing. And you may find as a Capricorn of like, no, don't take away my extra heavy baggage. Don't take away my burden. This is what I do. You may find yourself resistant to this at first. But as the person makes the case, and necessity may be part of that case, maybe there's deadlines you have to meet or a volume of work that you have to do, so that this forces you to think differently about your approach. What you may find over this 7 week period, and I love that you get 7 weeks of Mars in Virgo, because it's not just someone telling you what to do and you like, okay, yeah, 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 talk to the hand, or someone telling you what to do and you try it once or twice and then you dump it. It's 7 weeks of concentrated Mars and Virgo energy. So Mars in Virgo is going to be making its case, but it's a coaching energy. It's a coaching figure to you. It's going to be showing you how you can apply yourself in a way that's different, and in a way that's committed. As a Capricorn, you can be a little Scorpio when it comes to learning something new. It can be like, that's new and that's different, and I've always done it like this, and I'm not changing. And what that can sort of camouflage is this fear of rejection or even failure. Fear of failure, like if I try something new, it doesn't work, and that was a waste of time. Or fear of rejection, like I try something new and I like it, I want to show off, and everyone's like, really? So there can be a fear or anxiety about trying something different. This Mars in Virgo, and I also love that it's an immutable sign. So Virgo's like, it will make adjustments. It's like, let's try it this way. Okay, let's try it that way. Maybe a little less of this and more of that, or less of that and more of this. So Virgo makes adjustments as it moves forward. And so during this 7 weeks, not only are you going to be discovering a sort of leaner, meaner you when it comes to taking on work, a more effective way of approaching your work, not to get the results, but a more effective way that maybe balances your life and lifestyle, or your home and work, balance here. Not only will it be more effective, but it's something that's going to be very convincing. And more importantly, what you'll find at the end of the 7 weeks is that it's something that you're really good at. All right. That there was a part of you that's been wanting this. And now that you've gone through this period of exploring a better, leaner, meaner work ethic and work practice, you're going to see the results, but you're also going to, feel very comfortable and very happy about it. That not everything has to be a struggle. Not everything has to be a challenge. And that's what Mars in trine to your sign can do. It can take the combative or the challenging energy that Mars naturally brings, and it can funnel it into a way that's constructive and a way that you really benefit at the end. And so that's what I see happening for you over the next 7 weeks. And of course, being a Capricorn, not only will you master it very quickly, but you will already start to build on what it is that you've always mastered, because with the Capricorn, there's always got to be a new mountain to climb. If you're born under Aquarius or you have Aquarius rising, this period of time, these 7 weeks that Mars is traveling through the zodiac sign of Virgo, is not going to really sit comfortably with you. The reason it's not going to sit comfortably with you is because Mars is traveling through a zodiac sign that forms a quincunx to your own zodiac sign. Quincunxes are what I call the postmodern relationships in astrology. They're the non-relationship relationships. And what I mean by non-relationship isn't that it's negative or antagonistic. You just have a hard time finding a fit with that energy. And usually, energies that we find having a difficult time finding a fit with are kind of near misses. They kind of almost hit the mark, but not quite. And that's what happens with a quincunx. It's not one of the Ptolemaic aspects. Ptolemaic comes from Ptolemy, Claudius Ptolemy, the Hellenistic astrologer, who really put together the techniques of astrology from different traditions and schools into the Tetrabiblos. Um, and the Ptolemaic aspects were conjunction, that's where two planets are on the same page, opposition, where two planets are in opposite corners and want nothing to do with each other. There's the square, which is combating and fighting, the trine, which is I've got your back and you've got mine, and the sextile, which is like, what can we do that would be mutually beneficial to both of us? We're not quite on the same page, but I can see where we can do a lot of good for one another. So let's have a conversation. Let's collaborate. Let's throw back and forth different ideas and see what we can create together. Okay, that's a sextile relationship. A quincunx is at a midpoint between a trine and an opposition. So what happens is that a quincunx, uh, because it's got that trine component, always feels like drawn to the other sign, like, we would make a great fit. But then it moves into the opposition part, which is like, oh no, we're not a great fit at all. And then it retreats from the sign saying we're not a good fit at all. But then you know what? Maybe I didn't try hard enough. Maybe I didn't give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to try again. And so the energy will attempt another bonding only to find, no, no, we don't get along at all. We don't have anything. So there's this constant back and forth. I often describe quincunxes as being a wrinkle in the astrological chart. That might sound like a huge headache or an inconvenience to people, but I have also found quincunxes to be tremendously creative because they never stop trying to find that fit and they never stop feeling like it won't work out, but then they try again. And what comes out of that can be a lot of creativity if you're willing to work with this idea of a work in progress. Um, with Mars in Virgo forming a quincunx to your sign of Aquarius in a very sensitive area of your chart, which is the solar eighth house, you may be dealing with the issue of um, what is owed. Okay, obligations, responsibilities, but let's get into what is owed to you or what you owe another person. The eighth house is famously the house of sex, death, and other people's money because it's based on marriage. It's the house that follows the seventh house, which is marriage. So, where the first house is me and the second house is my stuff, the seventh house is my partner, and the eighth house is my partner's stuff. And so that's what the eighth house deals with. It deals with partners' stuff. A marriage is consummated sexually. You inherit on the death of a spouse, and it's other people's money, like dealing with estates, dowries, things like that. The eighth house also covers the idea of debt, what you owe other people. That will show up in an eighth house transit. And indeed, Mars going through your eighth house over the next 7 weeks could deal with debts that are owed to other people. You might find yourself really struggling with financial issues of being indebted to, or owing someone, or having to pay back. That might be what your next 7 weeks are about, and how you deal with that psychologically, fiscally, and spiritually. My feeling, however, is that it may have more to do with what other people owe you. All right. In other words, being an Aquarius, you may have helped people out financially, or you may have helped people out through your love, through your protection, through your camaraderie, through your support. And you may feel a loyalty to people because they haven't been able to take care of themselves, or they've been dealt a rough time in life, or things are really difficult. And as an Aquarius, being an air sign, you take loyalty to people very seriously. It's really sort of like an ethic or an honor code for you. But Aquarians aren't always the most selective, shall we say, about those loyalties that they form. All right. So where other people keep their part of the bargain, or you did me this favor and now I've returned and I'm going to help you out with a favor. I'm going to pay back, or I'm going to do you a good turn instead. What can sometimes happen with Aquarians is that they can collect friendships or associations or loved ones um, who owe you a lot, who depend on you a lot, who rely on you a lot. And as an Aquarian, you'll just carry the burden. You'll just be like, I'm there for you. And you don't say it. You don't say it that you don't say that haphazardly or casually. When you give your word to be there for someone, you are very much there for that person. But at times we have to ask, what's that person doing for you? Now some people might be like, how can you think of someone like that? This person went through a hard time. I'm the only person who's keeping them going. I can't give up on this, that sort of thing. And there are relationships and associations that are constructed that way, but not all of them. There can be people who um, the uh, the shelf life of the friendship or the association has come to an end. Um, they're not doing for you what they used to do for you in terms of maybe companionship or intimacy or time together. They may be people who just hang or ride on your coattails. And so during this period of time, when Mars is going through the zodiac sign of Virgo, it's going to ask you to really look at these intimate relationships, but these relationships in which you feel um, that people owe you. Now, that idea of someone owing you as an Aquarius is I mean, I might as well be speaking a foreign language. I mean, that does not compute. No one owes you anything. You help them. You're responsible for them. You're there for them. But people can owe you, not just financially. People can owe you, I don't know, respect, gratitude, appreciation. Now, that's not something you ever want to say in conversation with someone, like, you owe me your gratitude or respect. You don't say that in conversation, but there is such a thing as owing gratitude, as owing respect, as owing appreciation, meaning expressing it, exhibiting it. You can go to the lengths of the world for someone, but if someone's kind of like, yeah, okay, that was great, thanks. You know what? I've got this other favor I want to ask. Then why is this person in your life? And that's kind of the question that Mars in Virgo is bringing up. This might be a period of time when you're going through your iPhone list of contacts and you're like, why is this person in my life? Or why am I helping this person with their troubles or their struggles? I mean, what am I getting out of it? Those are tough questions for an Aquarius to ask because they're deemed as too selfish. They're deemed as just really too selfish. And Aquarians recoil at that idea of being selfish. But it's not selfish to want someone's appreciation and respect that you've given so much to. If you've given so much to someone, it's not selfish to want that in return. I mean, if it's a charity case, that's fine. But if it's a relationship, it's not. And that's one of the beautiful messages of Libra, because a relationship is a covenant between two people. It's the scales in the balance. And so this is something that you're going to be thinking about a lot during this period of time, whether you want to continue with certain relationships or associations. But Mars in Virgo may give you a higher challenge, a taller challenge, a steeper challenge. And that might be communicating that to the person. Communicating to the person, I feel like you're dead weight. I feel like you don't appreciate me. I feel like you don't respect me. That is almost, just even talking about it, a tougher challenge. I mean, I can hear it. That would be a tougher challenge for an Aquarian to actually bring that up. And I think that Mars in Virgo is going to prod you to bring that up. You may be reluctant about bringing it up. You might find yourself in situations where you have to bring it up. And instead of being agonizing or guilt-ridden or shameful, you may actually find yourself engaging in some very real and some very profound and some very deep conversations with certain people in your life who might have been wondering or who might even be thinking, with this conversation, well, it's about time that we had it, because I want to be able to talk to you in this intimate way. I want to be able to talk to you in this personal way. So instead of just maybe scratching someone off the list and getting rid of them, this Mars in Virgo may actually invite you to have these very deep and very profound and these very nourishing conversations. If you're born under Pisces or you have Pisces rising, this period of time of Mars moving through your opposite sign is going to be pretty tough and it's going to be pretty rough. It's moving through the seventh house in your solar horoscope, and that's the house that deals with relationships and open enemies. Okay, so it's this idea of forming a relationship with someone. Well, actually, okay, let's talk about how does a relationship become an open enemy. You can be in love with someone and you're like, I want to marry you. And they're like, I'm in love with you. I want to marry you. And you marry and you're living a blissful life. And let's say the love goes out of the marriage. The relationship hits some rough times. Um, there's been a lot of ways in which you've hurt that person and that person's hurt you. You want to get a divorce. And when you get a divorce, that can be very combative and that can be very hostile. And the person who was the love of your life is now your open enemy. Okay, so the person who was supposed to be by your side, in a marriage and in a covenant of love is now your open enemy and trying to get as much money out of you as they can possibly get. Okay, so that was, astrology has been around for 2,500 years. And so that's basically, a perspective that one can have of 2,500 years of marriage being an institution in society. It's the idea of the partner and the open enemy. What happens with Mars moving into this part of your chart is that you can experience a lot of distress, a lot of disputes, a lot of struggle, a lot of trouble with a partner. This can be someone that you're married to, or this could be someone that you're business partners with, or this can be someone that you are involved in a creative collaboration. This can also be the people in your life, loved ones. With Mars and Virgo, it's opposite you. And you may feel like they're very critical of you, that they're very exacting of you, like there's nothing that you can do that's right or that's going to make them happy, and that you're kind of resenting always being, the failure or the disappointment or, the mess that needs to be improved or cleaned up in some regards. You may feel like your partner isn't on your side at all, that your partner is just sort of thinking of things to find wrong with you. And when you, come home at night or something like that, there they are with their list of grievances and no way that you can ever make them happy. They seem more invested or involved in the grievances. They seem more invested or involved in the criticism. And that could be really tough in any sort of relationship. Again, if it's spousal or business partner, or let's say it's a relationship you have with a coach or a teacher or a loved one or a best friend, where that person has just decided you can't do anything right. And they're going to remind you of that every single day. All right. So that doesn't create an environment that you want to come home to or work in or be with the person there. And it can also make you very defensive. And it can also make you retaliatory. And it can also make you like not want to spend time with that person. And it can make you think about, well, maybe we should split, maybe we should break up, because we seem to be making one another's lives miserable, all right? And that's certainly an option. It's certainly a possibility during these 7 weeks that Mars is traveling through your opposite sign of Virgo. But there's another way to look at Mars traveling through your opposite sign. Another way to look at it is that it may be your partner, your loved one, your intimate, your business partner, creative collaborator. They may be the one who is facing struggles in their own life. We don't own all the houses in our astrological chart. All right. We think, that the chart is all about us because it's our chart, but it's not all about us. Not every single house has to deal with us. Certain houses have to deal with your environment, other people, community. The seventh house has to deal with your partner, your intimate, your nearest and dearest. But Mars going through that house can symbolize struggles that they're going through. Maybe your partner is going through struggles with their own family. Maybe your partner is going through struggles with their coworkers. Maybe your partner is going through struggles with their business partner. In other words, Mars going through the seventh house could talk about disruptions, fights, and struggles that a partner's going through in relationships that don't have to do with you. All right. That basically this person is bringing them into your life because you're partnered with this person, but it may not be you and the partner clashing or having difficulty. It may be your partner being stressed out because they're going through all of these disputes and these fights and their combats with the people in their life. That may be another way of looking at this. And sometimes when you can see that, and when you can take yourself out of the equation, when it can be like, you know what, we're fine, but this person's going through a rough time, then you can choose how you want to deal with that. Do you want to be supportive? Do you want time away? Do you want your own space? Do you want to be listening? As a Pisces, you're probably going to want to be that with that person. Also want your time away. Okay, that's kind of like what Pisces does. Is like Pisces is I'm 100% there for you, and then when I have to like absorb all of this emotional information, I'm nowhere near you, and then I come back and I'm with you again. It's kind of like Pisces has to have that time away, that time where they go to their private spiritual retreat within, or shut the door to the bathroom and enjoy a wonderful, luxurious bath, that time where they can unwind. So if you can perhaps see the next 7 weeks as issues that the person's dealing with in their own life and not make it about you, you know, maybe even putting down some guidelines like, listen, I think the person you're mad at isn't me, but it's really Martha. And so maybe you should be having this conversation with your sister Martha and not taking it out on me. Things in which you can almost sort of redirect or realign some of this energy. Or maybe you're there for the person and you listen, and all you have to do is say, like, wow, that's rough. That's really hard. I can't imagine what it's like being put in that position, the one that you're describing to me. Just being there as a sympathetic party, not having the answers, not solving the problem for the person, but just recognizing what that person's going through. That can be incredibly comforting, and that can be incredibly supportive. So during this period of time, it might be difficulties in your relationship these next 7 weeks and confronting and dealing with them. Or you may discover that someone's bringing a lot of the stresses that they're going through into the relationship. And if you can sort of separate those ideas and maybe even redirect the person, or maybe even listen to the person, then they stop taking things out on you. And they're more kind of like, wow, I can really talk about this with you. You really get this. You understand how hard it is. You're making me feel seen. You're making me feel recognized. You're making me feel comforted. This is a way in which you can turn that Mars energy around so that the Mars energy isn't opposing you, but you're giving comfort. You're giving solace to that Mars energy. It brings the fever down. It brings the anger down. And the person feels more trusting, more comfortable with you. And so it's less going at you and more really being on the same page while recognizing that what this person's going through may be what they have to deal with and not what you have to deal with. And that sort of creates a camaraderie for the next 7 weeks with Mars going through the zodiac sign of Virgo. But it also creates a very important space between the two of you where you're not being upended and you're not being upset by what this person is going through. And that can be a wonderful thing that you can create in your relationship so that when the oppositional energy changes, you go from being on two separate paths to sort of reuniting or coming together again a bit further down the path than where you are right now.